Good morning. Today is the 16th day of the second Adar, and the 26th of March. We're looking at the third reading of Parshat Tzav. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the verse that is Leviticus 7:37. The verse in Hebrew reads, Zot Torah la'olah lamincha ve'lachatat ve'la'asham ve'lamiluim u'lezevach hashlamim. So this is a verse that sort of summarizes all the types of offerings brought in the tabernacle and in the temple. And in English it would be something like, such as the Torah, meaning the teaching or the ritual. But he uses the word Torah, the word that we're so familiar with. So such as the Torah of the burnt offering, the meal offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the offering of ordination, which, if you recall, is what we're dealing with right now because we're in the middle of the 8 days, 7 days plus 1, of ordaining, inaugurating the tabernacle and ordaining the priests, and there were special sacrifices that were brought on these days. And finally, the sacrifice of well-being, or peace offering, as we've called it in the past. So this is all from Leviticus 7:37. What we're going to do today is more quantitative rather than qualitative, but we'll get some quality out of it also. And the reason we're going to do this quantitatively is because this phrase, Zot Torah, this is the teaching, or this is the Torah, is a very important phrase. Here it is, the Torah saying about itself, I am the Torah. Of course, here it's specifically talking about the rituals performed in relation to these offerings, to these sacrifices. But still, this is a very important phrase. This is the Torah. It's one of the few places, where we find the Torah referring to itself as Torah. And there are two other places, only two other instances in the Pentateuch that we find these two words together. This is the Torah, or such as the Torah, Zot Torah. And the other place is in Metzora, which is also in Leviticus, and it can be found in Leviticus 14:54. There it's talking about leprosy, and it says, this is the Torah regarding all lesions of leprosy for skulls. Skulls is a type of a skin lesion. And the third verse is probably the most famous one, and it is the one in Parshat Chukat, which is in Numbers, and there it'll be in Numbers 19:14, and it's describing the preparation, of the red heifer. And the red heifer was, of course, used to purify anything that had come in contact with a grave impurity, such as a person who's deceased, or other things that are related to death in some way. And there it says, Zot Torah Adam ki yamut ba'oel, kol haba el ha'oel v'chol asher ba'oel yitma shivat yamim. This is the Torah. When a person dies in a tent, whoever enters the tent and whoever is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days, until he is showered on with water that was to which part of the red heifer ashes were added. So now let's focus on our verse. And again, we're at Leviticus 7:37. So you have to see the Hebrew text in front of you, because all this doesn't work in English, because the English text can be translated in many different ways. But the Hebrew text is precise. It's never been changed. And so we have altogether 47 letters in this verse. And again, the verse is Zot Torah la'olah lamincha ve'lachatat ve'la'asham ve'lamiluim u'lezevach hashlamim. That has 47 letters, and we have here what we call self-reference. We said the whole verse is like the Torah referring to itself. It's saying, this is the Torah. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm the Torah. Except in this case, it's the Torah again of these offerings. But there's more self-reference in this verse, and it's beautiful, because the first letter, Zot, the first letter of Zot is a Zayin. Zayin is equal to 7. And the last letter of Shlamim, the peace offering, is a Mem. The mem is equal to 40. So altogether, the first and last letter equal 47, which is what we just said, is the total number of letters in the verse. So it's like the first and last letters relate to the entire, or allude to the entire length of the verse. We have another similar beautiful occurrence of self-reference in the first of the 10 Commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. That verse has 41 letters. The first letter is an aleph, Anochi. The beginning of Anochi is an aleph, which is equal to 1. And the final word, Beit Avadim, Avadim ends with a mem, which again is equal to 40. And so we have 41. The value of the first aleph and last letter mem together is 41, exactly the number of letters in the entire verse. Now let's focus on this phrase. This is the Torah, Zot Torah. Again, this is a phrase that appears just 3 times, and we just mentioned the 3 verses. So it equals Zot Torah. Zayin we said is 7, Aleph is 1, Taf is 400, Hey is 5, Taf again is 400, Vav is 6, Resh is 200, and Hey is 5. Altogether 1,024, which is a very perfect number because it's 2 to the 10th in an entirely unrelated occurrence of divine providence. It happens to be that right now on this channel there are 1,024 subscribers. But again, no connection. But 1,024 is a very important number we've seen in the past because it's the total number of letters in the 2 paragraphs of Shema. Shema and Vehaya together, there are 1,024, 2 to the 10th letters. Now, the sacrifices described here are of 6 types. We said the burnt offering, the meal offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the offering of ordination, and the peace offering. If I take the value of these 6 types of offerings, there'll be Olah, Mincha, Chatat, Asham, Miluim, Zevach Hashlamim. Together they equal 1,536. Now on the face of it, this doesn't say very much to someone. Why? Because what is 1,536? It could be many, many things. But one of the things that Rav Ginsburg has innovated is looking at numbers as products, especially composite numbers. Composite numbers are always a product of primes. Now, sometimes you go down to the primes and sometimes you don't, depending on what you see. But you got to think of primes as like the basic building blocks of all the numbers. So the primes are 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, and so on. You can produce, literally produce it as a product, any number. This is called the fundamental theory of numbers, the fundamental statement, or the fundamental theorem of number theory, which is that every number, every composite number is a product of primes. So here we're not going to look at it as primes, we'll see why in a second, but 1536, again, which is the value of these 6 offerings mentioned in the verse, is 6 times 256. Now, we just said before that the phrase Zot Torah, this is Torah, is equal to 1,024. So if you like hexadecimal numbers or base 2 numbers, so you'll immediately recognize that 256 multiplied by 4 is equal to 1,024. But all this means is that 256, since 4 and 256 are both powers of 2, so that just means that 256 is 2 to the 8th. And so we have another 2 to the power here, but the real point is 256 is the value of Aaron, the high priest. Aaron, Aleph, Hey, Resh, Nun, is equal to 256. So we have 6 times Aaron. And that's exactly what we're talking about in the verse, the 6 type of offerings that Aaron is going to be bringing in the tabernacle. So that's another beautiful reference to what we're seeing. If you look at the article on Patreon, patreon.com/Galinai, you'll see that in the article we also took these 6 types of offerings, and we corresponded them to the 6 emotive sfirot. And in short, the correspondence is that the burnt offering is loving kindness, sin offering is might, the ordination is beauty, the meal offering is victory, acknowledgement is the guilt offering, and foundation is the peace offering. These have to be explained in length. We don't have enough time, but I recommend looking at the article to see these. Now, there's a very interesting thing that you can do, which is to figure a verse or a phrase. We haven't done much of this because it's very hard for me to show it on YouTube or on Facebook. I would have to do a lot of editing at this point to show you a picture. Instead, what I'm going to do is, first of all, refer you to the article where the pictures do show. And right now I'm going to share the screen on Zoom, but that means that the people watching on Facebook won't be able to see this. But still, the people here on Zoom get a chance to, and whoever wants to reference the article itself, it's on Patreon. So, what do we want to see here? We want to take all 3 verses together. The 3 verses that begin with "This is the Torah." And if we count all the letters in all 3 verses, and again, what they have in common, like the Torah is telling me, look at this, and this is called Mesorah. There's a whole body of knowledge from very ancient times of looking at different phenomena in the Torah. And one of the types of phenomena would be looking for similar phrases. So in this case, the similar phrase, again, is this very important phrase, and in Mesorah it will appear, Zot Torah, it would say Gimel, meaning 3 times, and sometimes it'll even give you a hint about where they are if you don't remember yourself. That's how the Mesorah works. Then there was a Mesorah, a large Mesorah, or a major Mesorah, where these hints, these allusions were opened up. So people said, 3 times, here are the 3 verses in which this phrase appears. So now we're going to take all 3 verses together, and we're going to see that they have 125 letters between them, all 3 verses. 125 is also a very nice number because it's 5 to the 3rd. So theoretically, you could take the 125 letters and construct them into a cube of 5 on each edge. But that's very hard to depict. There used to be a time when we wanted to do this, didn't find the right programmer to do it. But you can imagine that you would have a 5 by 5 by 5 cube, and you would just put the letters, think of like a Rubik's Cube, that instead of having 3 by 3 by 3 has 5 by 5 by 5. And each cell, each one of these little blocks, these boxes inside the cube, will contain 1 letter. But we don't usually do it in 3 dimensions. We usually try to find something that has 2 dimensions. So the question is, how can you draw 125 in a shape that would actually make some kind of sense, some kind of geometric sense? And as it turns out, 125 can be drawn as, well, you know this already, but if I just take 25 times 5, I'll get 125, because that's exactly what it means. It's 5 to the 3rd. It's 5 times 5 times 5. So I could get to this through a little bit of algebra, but I could easily picture myself, and that's the picture that you're seeing here. Hopefully seeing it on your screen if you're on Zoom, and if not, go to the Patreon article and see it there. So what you see here is that we have 5 squares, each one 5 by 5. So that'll be in total 125 letters, and we just populate these cells or these squares with the letters of the verses. So we have, ours is the first one, so Zot HaTorah, La'olah, Lamincha, V'lachatat, V'la'asham, V'lamiluim, U'lezevach HaShlamim. So it ends here. Then the next one will be Zot HaTorah, Lekol Nega HaTzarat, V'lanatek. And then Zot HaTorah, Adam ki yamut ba'oel, Kol haba el ha'oel, ve'kol asher ba'oel, yitma shiv'at yamim. So we do this for many, many verses. The most important one, and we're not going to do more than that right now, but the most important one is, of course, the first verse of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim ta shamayim v'ta haaretz, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that has 28 letters. And 28 is a triangle. You can figure it as a triangle of, we call it 7. Why 7? Because we have one cell in the first line, then 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The base will have 7 letters, and that fits exactly 28 letters. And so we can fit it in, but there we have this incredible self-reference, and anybody who has any sense in mathematics right away sees this as a tremendous phenomena, that not only is there a triangular number of letters in the verse, the first verse of the Torah, but the value of the Torah's first verse is 2,701, which is also a triangular number. It's the triangle of 73. So again, this is not the number of letters, this is the value. So the value is saying triangle, and the shape is saying triangle, which is an incredible thing. It's not very common for that to happen. Here we have this beautiful thing that we can take these 3 verses that were joined together because of this common phrase, this is the Torah, and they form this type of shape. But we can do something even a little bit more interesting. I'll leave that for you to read in the article, how we can get from this shape of, which looks a little bit like opening up a box, but without the top. And by adding the Torah's first verse, and again, we have to see why we want to add these verses. And the first verse is the Shema, and the last verse of the Pentateuch, which is a verse that reads, this is, and for all the great might and awesome power that Moses displayed before the eyes of all of Israel. When he would take those 3 verses, which makes sense, it's like the first verse, the last verse, and you could say the most important verse in the middle, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, they together will complete this shape into a 15 by 15 square. And meaning we'd have 225 letters, and there's all kinds of very interesting things that come out of this shape. And I leave that for you to look at in the article. And also, the moment you know how to do these things, you can start finding phenomena yourself. So thanks for joining today. I know it was very quantitative. Hopefully you got some quality out of it also, not just quantities. And a little bit of a primer to how we analyze the Torah in terms of its quantities, in terms of its shape, and so on. And hope to see you tomorrow on Wednesday. All the best to everyone.